thanks Lam Lai and Matthias Ziegler for joining me today. And as I was just mentioning before, I mean this new series we have on YouTube is about reconnecting with past and current collaborators and engaging in some really interesting dialogues. We've worked together. I mean, Lam Lai and I have worked together. Actually, it's been over 10 years, even though now you've been living in The Hague for what, 8 years now, 8 or 9 years. But and with Matthias, we actually connected online through online performance. So I thought that was a nice context for today's chat. Sort of how we can how we engage telematically, how we can create new forms of or new platforms for performance telematically. So yeah, I was just wondering if one of you could share your first experiences working in this context or in creative collaborations online.
Maybe I can say first.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we worked with you, William, on the 2011 with Ensemble Adapter. Remember that?
That's right.
That is our first collaboration that we have, I think, 4 performers on 2 cities. So one in Hong Kong, one in Berlin, and then 2 composers, like one is me, and then also another Berlin-based composer, Paul Frick. He was also composing for the project. So I remember that there was in total 8 musicians in 2 cities, and then we need to compose 2 pieces for that. But then there is one very interesting element in this project is that we use a fixed delay in this setting of in internet synchronization. So which means that there is I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's like 1.14 second delay between the city, which means that if I play one note in Hong Kong, and then it's gonna take 1.14 seconds to arrive in Berlin, something like that. So it's actually, this situation is so challenging for me to write the score, because the score is not only one score, it's going to be 2 score, because you hear totally different effects in each side. So I remember I was like writing the kind of the same piece, but then it's kind of not transposing the pitch, but transposing the time a little bit, in the concept of transposition, but not in the pitch, but in time. So it was really a very interesting project I did. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the first time we commissioned you as well, were you like a final year student or just graduated from APA at that point, right?
I think 2011 I was still studying. Yeah.
Still studying, okay. Yeah.
In Hong Kong.
Yeah, and I think I'd just been in Hong Kong for like 3 years. So it was, you were one of, I think, the first composers I'd met in the city. So it was really wonderful to connect, with some former German collaborators, actually. I'd just moved previously from Berlin. So it was really nice to reconnect with these musicians and to be able to work out a way to do this remotely as well. And still, I have really fond memories of this project and these and your piece as well. I still remember it vividly. Yeah. How about you, Matthias? In terms of how did you get into this telematic space?
It was through my American friends, and I might just show this picture. Here, I don't know if, I think we can share, and we can, oh, you have to give me permission to show a picture.
Yeah, 1 second. Okay.
Okay. Because it kind of So it's not a, it's kind of a dark picture because it's from a movie we made about the whole thing. This was our first telematic stage, which was a concert between San Diego and Zurich. The whole thing started when my friend Mark Dresser in San Diego, bass player at San Diego University. And I was touring a lot with him with a trio. And when I was at his place, he said, you know, we are doing more and more of those telematic things. And I said, oh, what is this about, you know? And I immediately got fascinated by this. This was 2011. And so we worked towards our first concert, 2013. And this was Myra Melford, pianist from San Diego. That's myself in Zurich playing the flute. Michael Dessen, Nicole Mitchell, and Mark Dresser from San Diego. And here we have Jerry Hemingway, the drummer, who is now living in Switzerland. He was also in Zurich. So that was our first setup for telematic and for a telematic performance. And everybody, each of us wrote a piece for it. And of course, we came across all the difficulties that you were mentioning before, you know, having to find out that it's never symmetric. You hear two different scores. And of course, doing more improvised music, you can react to it very quickly and adapt to it. But once you impose a score, it has to reflect the situation, you know. And so the whole research began. We started with also having contact with Stanford University, Chris Chafe, who has been a driving force behind the whole telematic in the whole telematic community. And then we did more concerts. We did different staging was always very important for us because we said it has to reflect also how we are connected to this other part of the world. And then we applied from the Swiss National Foundation for a research grant, and we got it. And with that research grant, I think one of the first projects was the one with Hong Kong. And when I came across, when we were looking at music, we were looking, I think, at Bruno Maderna, Serenata per un satellite, a more open things, Christopher Key's piece, which was very interesting as well, because he had a concept of adding other spaces, a concept of delays. And then when I heard your piece, Lam Lai, it was like, oh yes, that's a way to deal with it. And even down to the rhythmic structures, I felt like when you looked at this music, you say, this is going to work with one way or another with delay. And it was just nice to see. For me, it was like, oh, yes, that has been composed with the telematic setting in the back of your head. So it was very nice. And I must say, I'm still using this piece when I want to explain to students about delay and about how things can develop online. So I'm very happy I got to know this piece. And then, of course, the performance was a big highlight for me. We still have the recordings of it and the video of it. Yes.
Yeah, there's some really interesting pieces that came out of our lab, right? And it was interesting. This sort of telematic lab that we did with your lab in Zurich and with it was through we had two institutions. I think we had two different phases, right? I remember one we did at the Baptist University where where the piece, the Chris Keys, the Chris Keys piece you mentioned was performed, which it's wonderful. I think we should do that again, actually.
Ready for
I remember there was one where we're at this the School of Creative Media as well.
Oh.
So yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, these labs, and I'm delighted that we were one of the you know, the first projects emerging from
Yeah.
from that grant.
And also the Conflux, Conflux was the title of one of them.
Conflux, exactly. Yeah.
And that was triggering so many things also with our students. We got students, like one of our students, he really wrote a piece for telematics after having been involved basically as a technician in the thing. He sat down and he wrote a piece, you know. I mean, and the students were so involved.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. I'm just wondering, Lee, your experience in writing for Ensemble Adapter and NME in 2011, how did that influence your compositional vision for this duo, the Raindrops, that you wrote for Matthias and I, as part of this telematic project? I mean, that emerged sort of 5 years after your first sort of big telematic project. I mean, how, for sure it would have been helpful, right? Just wondering if you have some reflections
I think for the first time when I write for the Ensemble Adapter version, because we have a fixed delay, so it's it's like quite long, so it's really like you hear a delay effect all the time. And I can say I was quite conservative at that time. I still want to have the idea that two pieces on two city should be more or less similar, like in general. But so that's why by that time I remember the piece are using a lot of layering, coloring idea, and I also recorded a street sound, and then we play over the tracks. And but then when I was composing for your piece, Raindrops, I think I understand a bit more about how actually the technology are really advanced than 5 years before. So I was told that the delay is actually pretty, it's very short. So it's really, you can't really hear, but you do see the different, because we also have this visual, right? Like the musician has to see another musician on the screen. So I take the idea of like how in general musicians play with each other, that usually you have this acknowledgement between each other when you start playing something together. So this connection for me, I had it in my mind when I write this. So that's why I try to take a step forward to put more challenging rhythmic pattern, and then the whole piece, it worked for me also. And I think this idea of very short delay is also very interesting conceptually. And because when I imagine the music, I actually imagine the idea of the music much more. Of course, the effect is going to be different probably all the time, because if you play with this connection, if a fast connection, then you have a very steady performance. But then if you play with another situation of connection, then probably you got different effects. So So this is my that piece.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Wow.
I remember the movements kind of alternate these. Okay, first the contrabass flute is the leader, then the viola is the leader. What was interesting, because we just actually did a studio recording of this piece, a concert version, actually without delay, which was interesting to record. You know, even those tutti moments, those really fast rhythms, they were still really hard to get absolutely precise tutti.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're quite challenging. So it sort of highlighted for me, like, even if you are in the same room, even with 2 meters distance, you know, there is, you know, that microscopic delay that inhabits most music making, in fact. So yeah, and I was actually surprised that you were okay with that concert version, and it sort of, for me, sort of, it's a very different piece, of course. We could, of course, make create the delay in the studio. It is possible. But yeah, it sort of became a different piece in a way. Yeah, just wondering if you have some reflections of that.
I think it's for me, it's gonna be, this piece can fit all kind of delays. So well, probably 2-second delay, we have to think about it. But this mini microscope delay can fit. And I think even without delays, it's also part of the delay spectrum, right? So yeah, that then I think, yeah, totally could work. And I think this piece, for me, I learned from this is the connection between the two musicians. That this is what I like to see. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I don't know. Maybe Matthias, you have some feelings. For me, this is a really, they're really, they feel like they're little etudes, little telematic studies in a way. You know, each little character pieces. We were looking to program this piece in a concert setting, actually, but even maybe look at we're going to experiment with, you know, maybe situating the musicians on different sides of the concert hall, you know, and working with that kind of delay as well. In the end, that concert was postponed because of a typhoon. You know, here in Hong Kong we have really bad luck. It's either typhoon or COVID, stopping programs at the moment. So in the end, you know, this concert where we were meant to do this piece, you know, it was postponed twice. But in the end, we're in the studio and we're able to have this discussion and talk about it. But yeah, it's interesting to have that. You know, they're like little studies that highlight different elements about, you know, challenges in telematic, you know, telematic writing.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned some of those things that come up when you play on distance. You know, you get somebody who kind of introduces the energy. It has the lead, takes a breath or puts the bow, and then the other person gets, as long as the piece has a pulse, gets the exact music played from the other side. And so the slave, as we call it, on the other side can put exactly on the music, can play the score, exactly the score that's written. But the person who has the lead gets, of course, the result with a delay. So it's like, instead of this, you get it like this. And you always feel like, hey, you know, the other side is dragging. And it's kind of annoying because you have the lead, but the slave has the good result, you know. So when you talk about delays, usually we say a delay up to 30 milliseconds is something we can deal with, which also happens in the orchestra. 30 milliseconds is a distance of 10 meters. So if you have the first contrabass and maybe the harp in an orchestra, then you have that distance and they can play together. Of course, they can also play together because there's a conductor. But you say 10 meters, you can also play without conductor. So the conductor isn't of a big help telematically, because the video has more delay than audio because it has more information. But 30 milliseconds is quite common in a chamber music production. If it's about a pause and you come in and it's just to go, you know, and it's part of a spatial feeling of the music. It creates space, you know, or acoustic space. And so it would be actually, when you said it, that you might play the piece spread out in the hall, it might be an interesting experiment because people might get some of the spirit of Raindrops by checking out, oh, this is something happening on distance. And I don't know if, you know, usually when we place, I have the other side switch on the speakers and I do go like this. And then I immediately get a delay and I go with a pulse of 60, like this. And if I've dot, if I hear a 60 note delay, I know it's 250 milliseconds delay. And with Hong Kong, we had about 350. 250 is what we get to maybe New York, Zurich, New York, you know. It's always a round trip, but you develop a feeling. And then the important thing is that you choose the piece to play the piece in a tempo that is related to the delay. And it has to have and I don't know, I don't want to be too much of a professor here, but may I show you how how I'm showing the Raindrops to my students?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to kill your piece. I know with the original thing, it's much with the original setting, it's much more colorful, nicer. But for the students to understand what's happening, I have this. Here I have the original. On purpose, I've chosen a simple piano sound.
Whoa.
And it's like the. Like this, you know, sorry. So this is how I feel it might sound if it's sounding in the original setting. If I have a delay of 1/8 note, so this was the tempo, probably 60, yes, it was 60. And I have an offset of 1/8 note, that means 500 milliseconds delay, and I choose that tempo, I get this result. And I was always surprised how much of the character of the piece is still there. You know, of course, it's a different piece, but how much of the character is there? If I continue and go to the next, let me see. Yeah, here. Now I have a 16 offset, which is 250 milliseconds. I get this result. Still quite an interesting, of course, and I'm not pretending this is your piece, this is what you intended to write, but it's amazing if I have 250 milliseconds. If, however, I have a dotted 16 offset, you can already tell from the notation that it's getting complex. It destroys the whole character. So this is what I feel, what I felt like. I discovered this with your piece. I felt like if we manage with that delay of 350 in Hong Kong to have a tempo which is related to the pulse of the piece, then we are the happiest musicians, you know, and you get a result which is very interesting, you know. Maybe there would be two scores coming out of it. One, the original, when I count in the how it sounds in Hong Kong, and the other one with that 8-note delay, or which might be the Zurich version. So a lot of thoughts about delay were triggered, and I think we are just very unhappy if we don't accept that delay as being part of the telematic acoustics. It's part of that space, and it's not just two spaces connected by a tool. It's two spaces and a tool which create an overall space where all the different elements, the acoustic of space A influences space B, and the character of the connection influences both. So that has been, for me, a big, just going from this concert has been a big journey afterwards in understanding telematics. So I'm actually very grateful to having you know, been able to play this piece. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it highlights for me, actually, when we were contemplating recording this, and it's like, how do we record it? Which version would we take? Do we take the Zurich version? Would we take the Hong Kong version? Would we take something in between?
Yes.
Where the internet, you know, where the internet connections meet, you know. So I was surprised when they said, "Oh, let's try a concert version. Let's see what that sounds like." Of course, now we've recorded everything on separate tracks, so it could actually we could do a, you know, this
would be an
these different versions
experiment.
too. Yeah, and also looking at the ways that it could be presented as well, because, you know, a traditional format may not work. You know, it could be something that is sort of an online, you know, art piece, you know, with, you know, like a mapped out version with different, you know, different pointers on the globe, you know. So sort of that was interesting for me as well, and I'm quite delighted, Matthias, that you use this as like as a case study for students, and it is interesting to see what it looks like when
and the result. I mean,
that offset is there.
Yeah, it's very clear. It's very clear if the offset hasn't to do with the character of the piece, and the character of the piece is in 16 notes and 8 notes for the pulse for the whole groove. If you have a dotted 16s, you are just off track completely. You kind of destroy the piece completely. You know, so and. If you play telematically, you slowly develop a feeling for this, that you can play pulse, you can play grooves, but you have to know that either it's da 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 da, or it's da 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 on another side. It's the same rhythmic pattern, but it's just landing on the other foot, you know.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, so with I mean, maybe it's a good time to move on to some other projects. I mean, what do you think? I mean, we're sort of. I mean, here in Hong Kong, it feels like we're in our first wave of COVID. But I know in like Europe, where you guys are, you probably witnessed like during the first lockdowns that, you know, musicians were wanting to collaborate online, and there was that eagerness to work on that online setting when everyone's locked down at home. I mean, and you know, we saw a plethora of a lot of you know, performances online. Probably too many. You know, not enough audience for the number of performances there there were. But did you reflect? I'm just wondering if you reflected on that or partook on, you know, in any such performances while, you know, you guys were locked down there. I mean, we're talking a year or two ago, I guess. Now,
not for me. I only participate as an audience to watch all of them, and I probably there is still quite a lot of improvised performance by that time, but I think they go for more freedom to deal with the delays.
Yeah.
So, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Improvisation can be an answer to this, to just get used to that media, because as I said before, you don't have an imposed work. It's directly about your identity in this whole construction. So you don't have something else imposed, and you might then, out of improv, develop a sense for things that are possible, and then in a second step be able to perform a composed piece. But it was, for me, the difficult thing to see was that in the lockdown, from one day to the other, there was about the digital fairness. People from rich families, they had the most wonderful equipment. And we had some students coming from, I don't know, Portugal, and they just had a mobile phone, you know. And so how, I mean, a university, you try to give everybody the same conditions to work in. That's one of the goals you have at the university. And here, all of a sudden, from one day to the other, it falls apart. And so, of course, then we started sending them good microphones, sending them laptops, you know, and we developed a way for collaboration. And many tools were developed during that time. And many good tools came out of that time. So, I mean, the technological development was fantastic, you know. But still, you know, it's kind of strange how fast we got into a routine using those tools. And actually a routine I don't want to get used to because I don't want to accept the deficits there are. I want to use this as one of different tools and work on the deficits and say, it has to become better, it has to develop. But that the whole question of disembodiment is incredible, you know, because for me, one of the major issues was it turns the hierarchy the other way around, because it's a network and you don't have a hierarchy of somebody teaching, here's the student, here are listeners, you know. So it's like we all sit in front of that screen and we all have those gravestones. If you have like 40 people or you know, you have stamp format. Who is the boss, you know? And the whole embodiment of people walking into a room and kind of creating an atmosphere by their presence, that's all gone.
That's true also for an audience, right? If it's the audience is completely online, it's so different. And that's like with our telematic collaborations, you know, there is still a community, there's still an ensemble, a community of musicians on either side interacting and engaging, you know. And even though, I mean, probably that connection between the two groups of musicians is always challenging. But I mean, in all the telematic collaborations we've done this, there's always been a live audience, right? So it's really challenging if everyone is sitting at home, you know, the level of engagement and, you know, you called it disembodiment, right? There's a
Yeah.
sort of, yeah, we definitely got there. So
Yeah,
I
definitely
think
happy.
and I think the audience, because they also have different connection, internet connection with different delays, probably they got completely different version of the piece,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
It can
Yeah,
happen
absolutely.
that they get same audience get different version. And we, you know, it was one of the issues we were trying to come up with a solution whereby creating the virtual concert hall, because that was a project we did during lockdown. So we had everybody in different location. I had a musician in, we were all three from Switzerland in the first project. One from, I was in Zurich, the singer was in Bern, and Jerry Hemingway was in Lucerne. A sound mixing was still in another location in Switzerland. Our video guy was in a fifth place. And parallel to this, we put up a Zoom level where we heard the audience, their reactions through Zoom. We had Zoom on our headphones while we were playing. And on Zoom, we didn't have our streaming, but we had the reaction of the people. So it was hugely complex. It was kind of a Baroque constellation we had at the end. And it was interesting. We had this reception before, and we had a little Zoom bar with a Zoom barista afterwards, which created which was framing the whole performance. And we had our video jockey putting us with a mapping software on the same stage, although we were in different locations. I just wanted to see, because for me the worst is when you sit in front of a computer, you see most beautiful streaming, and at the end you have this reaction that you start clapping, and you're clapping for yourself at home. I mean, this is a total disaster. You know, clapping is a group action. You don't clap for yourself. And so we wanted to do this bidirectional, and it actually worked. And we are still working on the same. We are still working on the same concepts, and trying to make that combination of rooms which we are streaming a separate event. And it's not just a combination of room A and room B. We really create a separate room C.
Wonderful. And the audience, they're all independent, right? They're all
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a huge complex thing, but it should be possible. No.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating, and particularly relevant to what's been going on around the world. And I mean, even though most of Europe's opened up now, still locked down in several countries in the world, including where I am right now. So that international touring won't be possible for the next who knows how long. And these connections, there's of course face to face is so important. And I mean, even with our ensemble, we didn't want to do online performance for so long, or like online in terms of online streaming. But I think what you're talking about, Matthias, is very different. It's sort of a collaborative model rather than just the presentation of something that would normally happen in a concert hall, right?
Yes. It was just that I felt that deficit of not having the bidirectional situation was
I mean, people
terrible.
can send in their comments, like a
yes,
Facebook feed,
then you get all those,
but all the spam, and then it's different, right? Yeah.
No, we had the people. Actually, we had the people there, and when they started clapping, the YouTube stream, which has about 7 seconds delay, was creating a feedback, and it was kind of winding up. So the applause was like a dog sitting in front of the butcher store going like, ooh, ooh, you know, it's kind of winding up, and which was enough to see that it can be bidirectional. Yes.
Yeah, no, very interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting what you've been working on. How about yourself, Lee? After all these lockdowns, what creative projects have you been working on?
I back to the ground actually.
Good.
Yeah, I work in theater quite a lot recently. So there's few project that I working for I work for the director, like whatever they want. Then I do enjoy the live encounter between people a lot, especially in theater. You really need to see the whole combination of people and sounds and scene on the spot, and I have to see it myself, otherwise I cannot get this feeling of the to get the energy from the scene. So
yes,
and this is also what inspire me after all this telematic concert and the piece that I wrote. That's the human encounter. We are actually going to another level probably. Like there is so many different variety of method that we can still develop. That is very interesting. And of course, we got the idea of this encounter from the live experience that we match each other. But then how can we like take it and try to? Yeah, that's very interesting. What Matthias is doing right now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you that that live human encounter. Well, I mean, it can be replicated online. If it can be enhanced online. But being in the same space, and then there's one collaboration we were involved in actually that took place remotely in Berlin, and I won't name names or the collaboration itself, but composer got COVID, wasn't able to participate with everybody in the hall, was trying to contribute remotely in the online space, but that sense of space and the being in the theater, that person just didn't have. So in the end, it was incredibly challenging, and it was almost like replicating a sort of a telematic working environment where there are miscommunications, there are, everything is like, you would be in a digital space, whereas everyone else was in the physical space working together, making a production happen. And actually, that's we're so thankful to be able to do when we can here in Hong Kong, to be able to come together finally. So hopefully, venues are opening again next month after a 4-month lockdown, and we're definitely looking forward to that moment, and being together with audience again. I mean, and hopefully live streaming some events, or creating, learning from these kind of telematic experiments where we can, engage with new artistic partners when the occasion calls for it telematically, but cherishing that in-person collaboration.
We might have a kind of hybrid collaborations that come out with all the technological background we have now for future. I mean, if you are talking about directing a piece, and then the director is the only person who is appearing on a screen here, which again, the hierarchy, directing a piece means you are there directing people, and if you are on the wall on a screen, you can't put you put flat on the wall, you know, it's the opposite of your role.
Two-dimensional, right?
Yeah, you're two-dimensional. You are, and so that's immediately you feel like the hierarchy is destroyed. So what's the way of collaboration to maintain that, to maintain the levels of talking to each other and of giving inputs, and it's yeah, and I'm sure the result will be different. I'm sure the result of a theater play will, or of a concert, of a music piece will be different, and which is okay, but we need the consciousness to see that here is a deficit. What do we make out of it? And not just, yeah, it's almost there, you know. That's no solution.
No. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I think it brought this discussion brought up, you know, issues of you know, emerging out of the pandemic, or wherever we are in the pandemic, but that, you know, technology can be it's a tool, you know, and, you know, even, you know, ensembles have to, composers, ensembles, you know, entire productions need to think in this, you know, hybrid sense more and more, you know. Even this year's arts festival, even though at, you know, Hong Kong Arts Festival, it was in a hybrid form, as you mentioned, Matthias. In the end, it became completely online because everything shut down. But it was conceived as, you know, something that was, you know, sort of a hybrid arts festival, just like, you know, and working, you know, with, you know, different live streamed events, also collaborative events, AR, VR, but ways to collaborate internationally. But even if people aren't physically able to be in the same space, to still be able to connect to the world, to connect to key artistic collaborators. So yeah, I mean, hopefully through this we've, you know, refined some technological tools, and to, yeah, see what the next phase is. Yeah, but I think that's good. I think we've basically that's a really nice discussion, I think. Yeah, we covered a lot of points. Yeah.
I'm actually really interested in what Matthias is doing. Like you kind of how do we call this? So use this kind of technology in the art making process. Yes, and I find it really interesting, because after I was mentioning the theater thing, actually before I was also thinking of like create a web-based website or something like that, for me as a sound designer to control on my side, and then I'm sitting at home and watching the theater, and then I can like real-time control through the internet.
Okay.
You know, this kind of ideas. So yeah, but no, it's totally super interesting, and I think there is a lot of possibility can come up, and especially for theater, it's not so much developed yet, because everyone still want the live, you know, encounter. That probably is interesting to break in some sense. Yeah.
Well, there are some. We have one person who is involved in theater, who is doing interesting experiments. If you want to check it out, we have the website networkperformance.space, and actually his last project his last performance was the very short performance about theater, was about soul, and it was about you know, about the space shuttle, and you connect from Earth to that space shuttle, and that you feel like you see something. We are having those tracked iPads now, You can kind of navigate with your iPad in that space shuttle, but then all of a sudden you get the voice of a person who says, "What are you doing here?" and starts talking to you. And so he has really included many levels, you know, of communication. And also with dancers, interesting thing with dancers. And we are now working on a thing for November, which I call osmosis, you know, like how between different cells, information navigate. And what we have a percussionist in one room who is playing in a big frame. The back wall is skin instruments. This wall is wood instruments, and the other wall is metal. And we kind of project that into a space. And then with ambisonics, we kind of pull the whole playing cube above people's head, while the musician playing with this person is still standing there in the same space. So we try to combine different things. And this week we are doing experiments with big cubes that we can kind of put, you know, you can make a tower of 3 cubes, and we project a person on the 3 cubes, but you can take out off the head of the playing of that musician and put the sound in another corner of the room, and we'll still have the musician's head projected on it, you know, stuff like this.
It's pretty funny.
And as my flutes are so long, you can have, you know, the head joint and the middle joint and the foot joint, and they can deconstruct the instruments, and the sound will come from the cube. You know, they have a speaker in the cube. Yeah. So kind of a installation.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, and there is maybe one thing I would like to mention. There's NowNet Arts. NowNet Arts. I'm not sure if it's written correct. NowNet Arts. Yes, if with capital or. It's based in New York, and the driving force behind this is Sarah Weaver, and she's been doing for the last 2 years, been developing projects, actually musical projects, but it's the whole thing she built around it. There are conferences in November, the NowNet Arts Conference. She does a little festival then before. In December, you should check it out. I mean, I can make the connection if you wish. She's doing a wonderful work and is herself connected to Jack Trip, to the Jack Trip that has been developed at Stanford University. Now new technologies probably have taken over, but also Jack Trip is developing a lot. So they have, I'm saying this because they have this community of musicians. They meet, they play together, and they have an online mixer. And somebody is online mixing the sounds, which are then broadcasted, you know. Wow. So you see all the musicians, and somebody's leveling this, and everybody can build his own server if necessary, and also have access to an online mixer. So it might be interesting for you to check this out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, totally. I would definitely check it out.
It's nice that things are, you know, all over the planet are being pushed forward. I mean,
exactly. After the 2 years.
Yeah.
It's like go.
Yeah, right.
Cool.
No, wonderful.
Talking about disembodiment, I remember one concert we did at the jazz club where we played with another destination, And for them, it was not so much a concert. They were more in a studio like this. And they had a laptop artist, and we had an audience, and the audience paid for the concert, you know. So I was standing there on stage with the percussionist, with Lucas Nickley, and we had over the screens, we had a laptop artist doing some strange things. And also the picture that was there was kind of, you know, how a face looks in the blue light of a computer if everything is dark around. So there was no, there was not even an idea of trying to stage something, you know. I felt like, oh, the energy is going down. And I looked back in the room to my technicians and went like this, you know. And he switched off the remote location. And Lucas and I, we took over and did a crazy 20 minutes duo, you know, to bring the energy back up. And then we switched back on when they saw that the other side was over with the piece. We switched them back on, and from then the concert went on like bidirectional. So in that special moment, I think it was good that we didn't have to drink a beer afterwards. I told them I told them 2 months later, and of course they were not amused, but we discussed it and it was fine then. We had just so different expectations what a concert should.
Yeah, and also those expectations, you know, like so many expectations. Like communication is sometimes it's down to, you know, being in the same room as somebody, right? To be able to read facial expressions, you know, and you know, stuff that can't be conveyed on a screen easily, you know.
Yeah.
And those kind of emotions, you know, or the dynamics of a live performance, you know, it's very, you know.
And actually, if you analyze it, it's kind of a paradox. You're closer because of the camera. You're closer to each other. You can actually read each other's face. And actually, you should wear masks if you Zoom, you know, because you expose yourself so much. And the rest of the body, I mean, I'm constantly doing this, but I'm kept running outside of the picture. You're close,
exactly.
you're
Bodily
close
movements
distant.
as well, right?
Yeah, you're close distant, and it's really a strange feeling. It's really paradox, and you're sending pieces of information. You're saying something, and then you wait, and you say again. So it's that fluent way of talking to each other, of reading, as you said, body language, of reading gestures, and maybe knowing the moment where you can go interrupt. When I'm teaching and I interrupt, I'm always too late because of the delay, because my flute students, they already take a breath. And so I always cut them at the beginning of the new phrase, which is very unfriendly. It's very unfriendly, and very unpleasant, you know?
Yeah, I feel you. I do that too. They're not happy about it.
No. And it does something to your communication, to your playing.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thanks for taking the time. Nice to catch up. Yeah, it's been too long. Let's do this again.
Definitely too long.
Find ways to.
And it was so nice to meet you in person, Lam Lai, here.
Oh, yes.
I mean, your piece in the last 5 years, always. And we have some video excerpts from this concert. And always when I see it, felt like, I discovered a lot about telematics by playing this piece with William Lane. It was just unbelievable how much I discovered in that single concert.
Wow.
I'm very grateful for your object you put in the musical world, you know.
No, I'm super happy. Yeah.
Right. Well, thanks to both of you. And
all right.
Touch base soon. Yeah. Have a great rest of your daytime as the sun goes down.
Oh yeah, it's your evening.
Oh yes.